Greetings, dear viewers. Anthony Mars Jr. on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film with the brand new edition of the Terra Adventure podcast with episode 325 presented by my Morphin Megaverse Power Rangers Facebook group. Haven't joined? Check it out now. Back in my previous episode of about the Mighty Morphin Trinity about Jason, Zach, and Trini, and when I mentioned some tidbit about the Dairanger suits in that point, if they were utilized as the upgrade to the Mighty Morphin Team suits, I was just thinking about this for the last couple of days, and also, happy very belated Valentine's Day and President's Day, because make that two holidays within over the 3-day weekend. But now that I'm recording this, it's for Tuesday, February 16th, and on a regular busy day, with making videos and such. And thinking back to my last ramble about that a little bit, I did brought up about that. I said I was going to bring this up eventually in one of these episodes of the podcast for the season and for, this year for everyone wanting to listen. A lot of us in the Power Rangers and Super Sentai fandom communities have always wondered, what if the Dairanger suits were properly utilized for Power Rangers, particularly during Mighty Morphin Season 2? Because everyone who has watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers already know that when they started adapting footage of the Dairanger Sentai for only particularly the Rangers' new Zords out of the Thunder Zords, because because Saban had already ran out of footage for from Zyuranger to be used for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then they contacted Toei to create new Sentai footage made exclusive for MMPR for the remainder of Season 1 after they had already used up all of the 50 episodes, for their initial 40-episode run of Season 1 by Doomsday. And then when that came to pass, there weren't really that many there wasn't really that much footage of Zyuranger that they could use for MMPR, so they had to use whatever footage that, Saban had at the time from Zyuranger, what was left over for the following few episodes. By the time we got to the episode Crystal of Nightmares, they would use, their own original footage of Sentai using the Zyuranger suits, but tied for MMPR's storyline and its originality purpose for the next remaining 19, 18 episodes. So by that point, and then up to beginning of Season 2, they still used some Zoo 2 footage when they were just slowly utilizing some of the Zord footage and only Zord footage from Dairanger of Dairano, aka the Thunder Megazord here in America, but in Japan. Once we got that, and then many episodes down the line when it came to resolving Tommy's Green Ranger issue with the footage of the Green Ranger also exhausted from the Zoo 2 footage for Power Rangers, and then when they made Tommy the White Ranger and gave him the Tiger Zord and Saba and so forth, there was some plans that they could have had the original 5 Rangers, and even when we had Rocky, Ab, and Aisha replace Jason, Zach, and Trini with Billy and Kimberly and Tommy still present, and then they would have, if they got the Thunder Zords, that they could have utilized the Dairanger suits from that point forward. But I said back in that tidbit a little bit last video that, if they utilize the Dairanger suits for the 5 main Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, that, Power Rangers' popularity would have quickly, ran its course, and knowing the fact that the show was only 1 season and a half going on 2 at the time back around the 2nd season, around the summer of 1994 when the show was on primetime, no less. And if they did go with the Dairanger suits and they upgraded them from the diamond-shaped dinosaur-themed suits to the more mythological beast type suits, I don't think kids back in 1994 would be interested in seeing them go with those costumes. But again, those suits are nice to look at and such, the Dairanger suits. But it's just Saban decided to keep the Zyuranger Mighty Morphin suits more consistent because brand consistency, because knowing the fact that we were so accustomed to the Mighty Morphin suits, aka the Zyuranger costumes for so long, why do we want to see the Dairanger suits replace the Zoo Ranger ones. Because knowing the fact that they've already ran out of Zoo Ranger footage to utilize for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, so they pretty much had no choice. But so it made sense for them to keep the suits for the next 2 seasons, for seasons 2 and 3 of MMPR, but they just only had new Zords for the next 2 seasons. And with Tommy having a new Ranger costume lifted from Dairanger, and have that same one lone Dairanger costume for the next season, because Kaku Ranger was only 5 Rangers. I wouldn't count Ninjor's counterpart of Ninja Man, even if Ninjor sort of acted like a 6th Ranger of sorts in the Sentai, and with the Alien Ranger, the Aquitar Ranger is involved in that footage. But they decided to have the Mighty Morphin suits very consistent over the course of the long period. But of course, by the 3rd season of Power Rangers, the show's popularity was already beginning to wane at that point, and then knowing the fact we had already seen these suits in action for over 100 episodes. And I think that was probably a reason why they decided, okay, by the time we got to Rangers in Reverse and then the Alien Ranger story, that was when people were tuning out of Power Rangers and phasing out, because they were switching out the costumes and characters in favor of something that wasn't going to be like MMPR. But Zeo and early Turbo still had Tommy and them still around. Sure, yeah, Billy left the show near the end of Zeo, and Jason would also leave until the end of Zeo, but after he had came back. But that's besides the point. There have been some original plans they had for those suits, because of all of the things from Dairanger, and yeah, Dairanger was a great Sentai for an early 90s Power Rangers era season of Super Sentai. But though it just never had a proper adaptation, much like Kaku Ranger with the foot. Well, no, in fact, there was a reason. Okay, I'll have to break it to you, but the reason why Kaku Ranger didn't, the Alien Rangers didn't had a proper season or full season, it's just basically, most of the majority of season 3 of Mighty Morphin already used most of that Zord and monster footage already, and so there was just only a little bit of some leftover Kaku Ranger footage to delve into and sink into before Mighty Morphin would run its course by the 2-parter Hog Day Afternoon of the Alien Ranger saga, but it's still part of the main course of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. If you condense season 3 in Alien Rangers, this is still the whole 3rd season, even regardless of what Netflix and the Shout Factory DVD say. But Dairanger, they never. It's just that series just again never had a proper adaptation, and because also they only used the Zord footage. Well, there was another factor why Dairanger never had a proper adaptation in Power Rangers' 2nd season. Now, for someone who has watched a bunch of Sentai and such, even back when I was no longer watching, doing this podcast anymore, I remember when I was on Tubi TV and when I heard, much to my surprise, by the summer to early fall of 2018, that Tubi TV would start streaming Super Sentai, starting with Zoo Ranger, Dairanger, Kaku Ranger, and then when I noticed that they were adding on those Sentais that Toei already had the DVD rights, Shout Factory had the DVD rights to bring to America. After I had finished binge watching Zoo Ranger, I did go in to watch Dairanger and watch that whole entire series throughout. And basically watching Dairanger made me wonder, yeah, well, I've noticed one of the many reasons, and the only couple of subtle generic reasons why some of its footage was only used in season 2 of Mighty Morphin is just the Zord footage was used, because Dairanger for the most part was more character focused, as opposed to, of course, to be a little bit similar and better than what Zoo Ranger was doing. While Zoo Ranger was about Grand Witch Bandora kidnapping children and, wanting revenge against children and the dinosaurs and stuff. And then also that, criticized Kid of the Week moment with Zoo Ranger every episode of its 50. But Dairanger's 50 episodes was very character-centric with Ryu and Daigo and Ko and all those other characters, and even the Gorma. So there was a reason why Saban decided to shoot completely new footage using the existing only Dairanger suit, that being the Kiba Ranger suit, which is Tommy's White Ranger counterpart, and only the existing 5 Zyuranger suits for the main Mighty Morphin 5 team. And also have, sometimes they would also adapt whatever monster from Dairanger was available for the shoot in time for original footage. There was a reason they had to only still stick with those suits, of the Zyurangers and that one Dairanger to make the Mighty Morphin team season 2 and season 3 team of MMPR, and also be more original because, well, one of the things I should give credit to Mighty Morphin, is that for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it's 3 seasons, and why it's the original and it's the greatest and the classic, is that Mighty Morphin took 3 years to adapt 3 of those Sentais to make a continuous storyline, but knowing to the fact that when they adapted the Zyuranger footage, the dinosaurs wasn't really much of a focus. It's just the Rangers just had the dinosaur motif as a power set and not really a big focus for the first season. Well, no matter how much we love the Dinozords and the Green Ranger and Dragon Zord and Rita being the focus for the whole first season for a villain, and then her lackeys of Goldar and Scorpina and so forth, and her monster of the week, any random monster of the week. And then season 2, well, again, Dairanger was very character focused, so that's why Power Rangers, the second season, was continuing from the momentum of the first season, especially the latter half of season 1, when they were still doing a bunch of Zoo 2 footage use for the following episodes post Crystal of Nightmares and Doomsday. And going forward, once we got to the second season with Lord Zed's introduction, and with him being an original villain and all that, and Rita being overthrown, and they were starting the new status quo, the first ever instance of the franchise beginning a status quo with changes going forward with the series, because keeping Rita around for another season would be a bit repetitive. So that's probably why Lord Zed was created, just to shake things up and shake up the status quo with the Rangers' battle against evil. Once that Rita was out of the picture and Lord Zed came in, they were still having the momentum of what they were doing back in the first season, well, what was left of season 1, but with Lord Zed around for season 2, and then so because the Dinozords were not going to be powerful enough against Zed's new monsters as opposed to Rita's monsters, so that's why they had to upgrade to the Thunderzord. The Dinozords had to be upgraded into the Thunderzords, but there was that contradiction to the contradiction subtext to the dialogue about the Thunderzords being more powerful than the Dinozords. Thinking about it, well, I do like the Thunderzords in their design, but they were no way, in any shape or form, powerful enough than the Dinozords. The Dinozords are still strong, nevertheless, despite, all we ever saw, during the entire first season of MMPR, particularly the first 40 episodes where they adapted all 50 episodes of Zyuranger, but squashed a couple of bits of episode footage of the Megazord and Ranger fights for those following 40 episodes, and squat all of them into those some episodes and multi-parters, because knowing the fact Zyuranger was very dark and dark fantasy heavy. That's why there were some episodes that had to be cut from Zyuranger, even though they used up a lot of footage that was still implemented from Zyuranger. But when it comes to Dairanger, there could have been chances they could have adapted the suits somewhere during MMPR season 2. And then, if they did Kaku Ranger, a full Kaku Ranger adaptation, but then they would have to take Kimberly out of the series or so. Or, I don't know, have Tommy still have the White Ranger suit from Dairanger. But no, of course, you can't have 2 different White Rangers existing from 2 different Sentais, even if one White Ranger is male and the other is female. But I think there was a good reason they kept the White Ranger suit, the suits of the Kaku Rangers specifically for the Aquitar Rangers, while the Mighty Morphin team is just basically 5 Zyurangers and 1 Dairanger for seasons 2 and 3. So therefore, they couldn't be able to use the Dairanger suits. But if they did use the Kaku Ranger suits in a different manner, I know that people didn't like the Kaku Ranger I mean, not the Sentai, but like the way how it was integrated into the Alien Rangers for some people. But I still like the Kaku Ranger costumes as much as I like the Dairanger and the Zoo Ranger costumes from Sentai. But, you know, Dairanger, there was an instance, okay, after 15 years rambling on, but I just need to get on to the point. But there was an instance where in the second season that if they did integrated the Dairanger costumes into, you know, for the main group, if Tommy was going to get the Kiba Ranger White Ranger suit for the second season, I don't know how it feels if they were to use those costumes and how kids back then would feel about them using the suits and see if they're going to be any powerful than their original suits, you know, with the dinosaur helmets. But I don't know if they're going to be secondary upgrades, because basically if they did incorporate the Dairanger suits as an alternate form for the main 5 Mighty Morphin team, if they're going to have the Thunder Zords, but then this would have been like Super Mega Force before Super Mega Force was even a thing. Because for anyone who knows about Power Rangers Mega Force, when Saban was forced to, you know, not to skip Goseiger and go straight to Gokaiger and all that other stuff, that they couldn't, you know, skip Goseiger. So they have to, you know, I mean, just to go to Gokaiger, they have to do Goseiger in order to do Gokaiger. But of course, they were very fickle about the fickle about what Sentai they wanted to do for the 20th anniversary season. But they were just foremost to admit to the fact they were forced to Frankenstein the 2 series. You know, having Goseiger being the main counterpart for the 2 seasons, with Gokaiger's bit of footage and suit use for Super Mega Force. But of course, you know how Super Mega Force is already still an downgrade, complete major degrading insult to Gokaiger. But if they did, you know, when Saban did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers back in 1993 and 94, if Saban did this exact same thing with the Dairanger Sentai for the second season of Mighty Morphin, much like how they already did with Mega Force 20 years later in 2014 compared to 1994, but MMPR would already be a mess as it would be for the second season, no matter how much. I did like the fact that by the second season, they were, despite that Dairanger's Zord such footage had certain things in it, and the Dairanger Sentai in itself had certain content in it that's not, you know, adaptable for Power Rangers. That's why Saban was given the freedom, and they pretty much saved up enough money to shoot a lot more original footage using those 5 Zoo Ranger costumes and also Tommy's Green Ranger costume of the Dragon Ranger. And then after, when he transitioned from green to white, they were given more freedom to shoot more original footage, despite the overabundant annoyance of them shooting scenes at a local park in California for Angel Grove Park almost nearly every episode of seasons 2 and 3. And then the next tangent, and then another thing I wish that they could have utilized for the Dairanger suits, you know, one of the other what if commodities, I wish they could have utilize the Dairanger suits for Zed's Dark Rangers, because the Dark Rangers were somewhat, you know, again, for anyone who knew about Zed's Dark Rangers in the television show, they were nothing more but repainted, poorly reskinned putty patrollers, Z putties, you know, color coded as the Rangers, but with those ridiculous, awful looking deformed face masks on them, thinking those are the Dark Rangers. See, I mean, I wish that opportunity back in the Green No More 2-parter, they could have, you know, brought over the Dairanger costumes if Saban wanted to, but then they would have to recolor the Shishi Ranger costume and make it as a Black Ranger, because even if Dairanger only had a Green Ranger in the core group and not a 6 like in Zoo Ranger, but they could have, like, did something with the suits. Or if you couldn't do the Dairanger suits altogether, just only get the helmets. You know, put the helmets on those god-awful Dark Ranger costumes and call it a day. But you'll have to repaint the Shishi Ranger costume, you know, as a Black Ranger costume, and knowing to the fact that the Lion Thunder Zord has some bits of black to its parts, but it was still color-coded as a Green Ranger Zord and not a Black Ranger Zord. Because I'm pretty baffled looking back on Dairanger in itself, knowing that the fact Dairanger was not like Zyuranger, where, okay, it has that red, blue, black, yellow, pink order as usual. It had a red, green, blue, yellow, pink, and later white order, because knowing the fact that we already had that in Zyuranger. So they would go back to the having black member, black team member thing come Kaku Ranger. And, but it's very weird giving a Black Ranger a Zord that belongs to a Green Ranger, which felt a little inconsistent looking back on the Dairanger footage, and then watching the Dairanger Sentai in itself and how they utilized the suits overall. I mean, I wish they could have utilized the Dairanger suits for Zed's Dark Rangers, if they could have, and then we would have had the five original Mighty Morphin Rangers with the Zyuranger suits versus Zed's Dark Rangers that were based on the Dairangers probably. And I wish they could have did that, if they wanted to. But again, instead we got those god-awful, Dark Ranger suits that were just putty repaints, color-coded as the Rangers with those awful faces again. So after Mighty Morphin, there was another instance that they could have used the suits of the Dairangers come Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Because rumor had it and legend had it that the Dairanger suits, when Saban was still doing Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and when filming on that series was insinuating, there was some intentions on having the Dairanger suits utilized for the ancient Galaxy Ranger thing, to tie with the Galaxy Rangers mythology and stuff. But everybody knows that due to the behind the scenes stuff with Valerie Vernon, who played Kendrix, the first Pink Galaxy Ranger, and due to her health problems during Lost Galaxy's production midway over 22 years ago, the idea of those the use of the Dairanger suits would be scrapped within Power Rangers. But I kind of wish that they could have used those suits somewhere in Lost Galaxy also, if there was the time, but yet they managed to adapt the Aura Changer, which is the Dairanger's main morpher, for Mike as the second Magna Defender in Lost Galaxy, but which everybody knows. But the Dairanger suits could have been used during Lost Galaxy if there was that time and that opportunity. But I think maybe, by that time, Sentai had already long moved on past Dairanger, and by the time of Lost Galaxy was Lightspeed Rescue's counterpart Go-Go 5 at the time in Japan. So, therefore, the Dairanger suits were probably already been destroyed. The original suits of them and helmets and so was destroyed. So, it's just only the morpher that was still around, probably somewhere in storage from the Toei vault for Sentai, for Saban to pick up and try to figure out what they could have done. And I also must wonder, where did Saban get the Aura Changer morpher from Dairanger to have Mike use that as a morpher to become the Magna Defender? I'll never know. Because the Aura Changer, well, I mean, for someone who had been watching Power Rangers since my youth then, but that was back in the time when I didn't know what Sentai was and wondered where did that morpher come from. Because sure, the Aura Changer didn't come from Ginga Man. Because knowing the fact when I watched Ginga Man and noticed some differences between Bull Black and Magna Defender, that Bull Black's morpher was really the sword when Hyuga became the second Bull Black. Whereas when Mike became the second Magna Defender in comparison, he just had the Aura Changer, the two wristband morphers, to become Magna Defender. But yeah, the Dairanger suits could have been used somewhere in Lost Galaxy if they wanted to. But yet, come Power Rangers Wild Force, they managed to get the Emperor Gorma costume to be utilized for Master Org, because Master Org, while he was purely an original, an American-made villain for Wild Force, but he utilized a costume of a Sentai main villain, that being the Emperor Gorma from Dairanger. So it really wouldn't be until another near 13, 14, 15 some years or so later come Power Rangers Super Mega Force, as we said once again. That I remember back when we had Super Mega Force, that the Dairanger suits showed up out of nowhere. Much to my surprise, when Gosei brought up about the whole powers, new powers never before seen on Earth, personally, I wish that of all of the Sentai teams that Super Mega Force adapted but without any explanation, personally, I wish the Dairanger suits should have been the only team of Power Ranger Sentai only Power Ranger teams that should have been adapted throughout Super Mega Force, because that should have been in my opinion, for Super Mega Force, if I were to rework that, the Dairanger suit should have been the only Power Ranger era Sentai only team suit that could have been adapted throughout the history of Power Rangers during, Super Mega Force. And personally, I wish they were the only new powers that they only had, not those other suits that were pre-Zoo Ranger and Mighty Morphin, which got me very annoyed very quick whenever I rewatch Super Mega Force and get to those episodes, when they use more team suits of Sentai that were never adapted into Power Rangers, pre-Zoo Ranger and Mighty Morphin. And Dairanger suits should have been the only ones they should have used, even if it's through the Gokaiger legendary Gokaiger's Gokai changes for Super Mega Force, and with their Super Mega modes and Legendary mode, and then with teams of Power Rangers and Sentai we've already adapted here, but with Dairanger being probably the only ones they could have utilized. And I think that during Super Mega Force, that instead of them using keys of other powers of Sentai's, because I don't know what Saban and them was thinking at the time. Everybody knows, because when I used to do this run of the podcast, the original run of this podcast back in 2014 to 2017, yeah, I've ripped a lot of crap about Super Mega Force to death, much like anybody in the Neo Saban era. But I personally wish that the Dairanger suits should have been the only Sentai only teams that were in between Mighty Morphin seasons 1 and 3, Zoo Ranger and Kaku Ranger, that should have been only within Power Rangers. And because those suits were never properly utilized, I wish they had a different name for those new powers other than Squadron, because how Super Mega Force was known for, with this pure sense of laziness of everything and such, and how lazy they were with its editing and storytelling, or lack of storytelling therefore of. But I wish that if the Dairangers were properly named as a lost new team of Power Rangers, they would have been called something like Aura something, Power Rangers Aura Knights, or Power Rangers Aura Thunder or something, or Orion Thunder, something like that. But using the word force would be a bit too generic if you call it Power Rangers Thunder Force, because of the fact that those suits could have been utilized for anything. And it seemed like, why did Saban wait until 20 years later after season 2 of Mighty Morphin to finally show the Source Ranger team suits that are supposed to be tied to the Thunder Zords? Well, see, basically, when that opportunity was there for season 2 of Mighty Morphin, it made sense not to do the Dairanger suits, because the Mighty Morphin suits everybody was so accustomed to, and everybody loved looking at those diamond-shaped suits and the dinosaur helmets, and Tommy is the green, with his original Green Ranger suit with the Dragon Zord helmet and the Dragon Shield and so forth. So, and also, if they did switch to, again, back to earlier what I said, if they switched to the switch the Dairanger suits for original footage and use of its Sentai footage proper, I don't think kids back in 1994 would be interested in seeing the Mighty Morphin Rangers, the 5 core group of MMPR, not Tommy. I mean, it makes sense for Tommy to have a White Ranger suit from that same Sentai where the Thunder Zords come from, because the Green Ranger is no more from Sentai, because it makes sense that they need to move on from Zoo Ranger and on to finish, getting to Dairanger, and then once whatever Dairanger footage they could use for the Zords and such only, then they would go into the Kaku Ranger footage and hit the same notes. But I would say that if they were also really ultimately implemented into Power Rangers lore, I would, in my head canon, I would really consider those Dairanger suits somewhat tied to like Zordon's home planet of Eltar. Maybe this was a team. Maybe the Dairanger suited Rangers should have been a lost team of Rangers that Zordon forgot he had during his battle, during to what was going on with him and the United Alliance of Evil on Eltar and so forth, and based on the lore there, maybe these were a team of Power Rangers that Zordon lost over time in a time warp or something in a great battle 10,000 years ago, with Zordon's battle with Rita and Zed and such 10,000 years prior in the Power Rangers lore. But we don't know really for sure. Maybe I can just write it off as, well, these Dairanger suited Power Rangers, not called Squadron. Maybe they were a squadron team of Rangers from Eltar that was wiped from a time traveled catastrophe or something. And I don't know what you would think. I mean, think about it. I mean, if these suits were utilized in Power Rangers proper, I would say that the Dairanger suited Power Rangers, that lost team of Rangers that are based on the Dairangers. But if they're tied to, if the Rangers have the Thunder Zords as an upgrade from the Dinozords to the Thunder Zords, but then how are the Dairanger suits going to be implemented and integrated with the ties to the Thunder Zords? But then again, there was the opportunity for them to transition from the Zoo Ranger Mighty Morphin suits to the Mighty Morphin version 2 suits to the Dairanger, aka the Dairanger costumes. But I understand that, it was a painstaking for Saban to, just only use the Zord and monster footage from Dairanger for the second season. Because, again, the Zoo Ranger suits, I know I'm repeating myself. It's just the Zoo Ranger suits were just so popular here in America, and the Mighty Morphin suits are just so popular in America and has so much cultural significance. So, I'm happy that they kept the Mighty Morphin suits that we have, and it's part of brand consistency and part of that cultural significance. So, therefore, the Dairanger suits were not going to have cultural significance if they were adapted as a upgraded suit design for the Mighty Morphin team. But I still like the Thunder Megazord and its design looking like a Samurai Shogun looking thing of a Megazord. But if they did integrated the suits, I mean, kids will be tuned out from the show really quick, and Power Rangers would have been canceled prematurely, I would say. I would say this would probably be the same. This is probably similar to a similar coincidence with Saban's other show that was like Power Rangers back in the 90s. Recall in VR Troopers when Saban did VR Troopers back in 1994 to early 1996. Ryan Steele, Brad Hawkins' character in VR Troopers, he had two different Metal Hero counterparts, while JB and Caitlin were the only two to have the same Metal Hero counterpart for the 2 seasons. While Ryan had two different counterparts. I don't know which one of them was, probably Matolder or any of them. One of the 2 series, because again, I didn't watch a lot of Metal Heroes to figure this one out, but from what I can tell with the footage that they were utilizing from Metal Heroes for VR Troopers with Ryan's character, I know that despite that, Saban was trying way too hard to have the team work together, despite trying to marry all of that Metal Heroes footage from the following shows that they could to create VR Troopers, because the footage was very inconsistent with the 3 different shows they adapted. But when they did adapt those 3 Metal Hero shows over the course of the 2 seasons, that's where things got a little befuddling, and I guess it go to show Saban was trying way too hard. Because in the first season of VR Troopers, Ryan had his half red, half blue costume, which was more recognizable. And when you look at Ryan Steele's first outfit for that series, it's more recognizable because we can tell that's Ryan Steele's original costume. But you go into the second season, and again, I've seen VR Troopers on Netflix back 4 years ago, around this time. And when you go into the second season, Ryan has a brand new suit from a different Metal Hero series, where Despera and Hardmaster and them came from. And it's like, it felt a bit inconsistent to the fact that, of course, when Ryan got another VR form, I think people got tuned out from the show at that point very quick, because the first season of VR Troopers, well, it was very episodic, and so was season 2, but they should have kept the same costume that he had from season 1. And also, if Saban had the budget and also had enough money they saved from filming season 1 with the 3 facing Scuds and stuff and Grimlords, I wish that they could have just did all original footage of VR Troopers for the second season. Half and half of the time do some footage from the Middle Hero footage and not complicate things, and that's what they got wrong. But at least it made sense why for Power Rangers they had to do all original footage using the remaining Zoo Ranger suits with that Dairanger suit. It worked for Power Rangers, but it didn't work for VR Troopers. When I just thought about that now, if I ever do get around rewatching VR Troopers again, but since the DVDs are out of print and stuff for that show, I'm going to have to binge watch the entire series again on tucoz.com and figure that out. What ifs, if that could have been, if season 2 of VR Troopers did more original footage than they actually could have, and not rely on another Metal Heroes counterpart to piggyback on. I tried what I could say, but I don't want to keep everybody up for long. But all I can say is, well, if the Dairanger suits were utilized in the Power Rangers proper, and instead of them being insulted as the so-called Squadron Rangers in Super Mega Force, and also what they could have been throughout the latter 2 generations of Rangers, that being Mighty Morphin and Lost Galaxy, I wish that they could have did something different with the suits. I mean, there have been different ways and different interpretations I wish they did the suits, but unfortunately we're just stuck with what we got. So I guess those are my thoughts, and I know I've talked a bit too fast about this because, well, the suits, they are some of the best looking Sentai only but skipped and Power Ranger era Sentai suits I've seen throughout the history of Power Rangers, and both that and Super Sentai. But I just wish they had more justice than it deserved, and but I just wish they were also, if they were used in MMPR, I wish they were tied to the Thunder Zords proper. But I understand brand consistency, and there was not going to be any chance that those suits would be used for the main 5, just because as soon as they get new Zords by the beginning of the second season, that they were going to be like skipped over. So those are my thoughts, guys. So what do you think of this? Let me know in the comments, and I'm off for now. So that's all I had to say about this. I do wish the Dairanger suits had a proper reutilization within Power Rangers. I kind of do. But there is hope that maybe we'll probably tie them in proper, unlike what Super Megaforce did with the suits and calling them, again, the Squadron Rangers. So anyway, so this was Anthony on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film. Subscribe, drop a like, share this video with your friends. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and any other social media I'm on. And that's it. Thanks for watching.